We had a live show over the weekend over last weekend, and it was in Austin, Texas. And it was really an incredible time to meet people in person, see so many of your beautiful faces. People brought gifts and incredible stories and came from all over the country. And I'll be rolling out different videos from this event. I did deliver a speech. Did something else I'm going to tell you about right now. And then had a Q&A. And I want to play for you one exchange that I had because I thought it was interesting with someone who I guess came off, he defined himself as not super MAGA, but he definitely was right-wing or Republican, and asked me about what I had laid out in the speech, which was that right the day before that event, Trump signed into law the destructive bill that guts Medicaid and SNAP and pushes wealth to the top of the economic ladder. And so he had heard that and was saying, I feel like that's not a fair assessment of the Trump Republican Party and is more the Mitt Romney Republican Party, and that Trump is actually more for the working class than I was giving him credit for. I obviously disagreed, and I'll show you this exchange. Oh, let me unmute.
So when I was listening to this talk, I was getting a story. I heard a common motif of the MAGA movement, the Donald Trump movement, being one in which the group is trying to take from the poor and give to the rich. Take from the poor by cutting benefits, give to the rich by cutting taxes, things like that. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm not necessarily a MAGA person. But during the election, I came across this one graph that showed that in 2024, Harris won disproportionately with college-educated, high-income voters, and Trump won disproportionately with college-uneducated, low-income voters. And I guess I'm just curious, I feel like you're portraying the Republican Party as it was when, what's his name? The 2012 candidate.
Mitt Romney?
Mitt Romney, yes. I feel like the portrayal of the Republican Party is more akin to the Romney Party than it is to the modern day populist MAGA Party.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Thank you for the question. So what's interesting is so much has changed about the Republican Party, but that part of it, and actually to a degree we really haven't seen in recent memory, clearly stayed the same. Now, your point, there's something more fundamentally honest about a party like the Mitt Romney Republican Party that ran pretty clearly as, yeah, we do believe in trickle-down economics. We do believe in cutting these programs and cutting taxes, often in a way that disproportionately benefit wealthy folks. What's so distorted and dishonest about what Trump does is he does win over those voters through critiques, some perfectly fine on their face, of the establishment, but then uses that as a Trojan horse to bring in even worse policies than we saw before. A lot of what you heard me talking about tonight is a bill like we've really rarely seen, maybe ever, in American history, that so thoroughly guts programs that benefit low-income folks, disproportionately people who voted for Trump. You're right. There's already counties that went like 80% for Trump who are having to shut down their health clinics because of the passage of this bill. And so it's even more sick and depraved that somebody who spoke to those voters more than past Republicans would be so willing to betray them with a bill that the combined effect of it is the poorest Americans lose wealth and the wealthiest Americans gain wealth, just in the numbers. That's not even just a political point, that's just the numbers. So I find that even more of a betrayal because of the facts you're talking about.
Roaring applause there. People were thrilled. I said, stop, guys. It was a good question. You don't have to say, I killed the answer. All right. No, so I at least the question came from a more MAGA defensive standpoint. I have no idea his specific politics. He said, I'm not necessarily taking a partisan stance on this. But what I find interesting about that is, given the caveats that he included, he doesn't see himself as, hey, you suck, Trump's awesome, right? He was just saying, I think you're not identifying the populism or more of the pro-working class characteristics of Trump's Republican Party in contrast to the old Republican Party. And I find that to be such an important question, because Trump's branding and his rhetorical attacks against the quote-unquote establishment has really convinced a lot of people, even who don't love him and don't find him to be an incredible president, that he does represent something that seeks to uplift the working class more than past Republican parties. And I don't know if I think it's the outsider branding that works for him, which is he wasn't a lifelong politician. He called out the old Republican Party and the quote unquote elites, but then he gets into power and is just focusing on his one big agenda item, being that reconciliation bill. He pushed through something that, whatever you think of the old Republican Party, they could barely dream of back during their heyday, in its effect in redistributing wealth from the bottom to top. And so instead of saying, hey, Trump, at least, this is what I hear from a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of problems, but at least he's disrupted the GOP and he's restructured its interest to align at least more with the working class, when in reality, all the things that were wrong with the old Republican Party, Trump actually took those things and heightened them and added to them authoritarianism and a lack of respect for our democratic institutions, which makes it even worse than the old GOP. So while people are duped by him going around in a garbage truck with his orange vest on, or his attacks against the establishment, he ends up being even worse than the establishment. And that represents a great betrayal, because at least some of those old Republicans would say all of these really transparently pro-rich things. They would say that they believed in trickle-down economics. They would say those things. And so if you voted for it, at least there was some exchange, and there was a lot of dishonesty too, but there was a transaction that made a little more sense. Now, Trump is so brazenly betraying those people and taking away, worse on their front, their benefits for the very elites that he railed against. It's crazy. I'll show you more content from that live event soon.